think if anyone wants to, they'll pop in a little bit later, but we can kind of jump into this. So I kind of want to just I'll keep this a little informal. So if you guys have any questions that pop up or things that you want to kind of mention, feel free. I was going to look at just the three more relevant specs. So obviously Resto, Feral DPS, and then Feral Tank. So kind of just a general overview of what I have kind of covered in this within each, Resto Druid. Kind of a general overview, roughly the abilities and specifically what down rankings are of value to you. Some of the different builds that are relevant, and then kind of just a general sense of how you want to gear and stat priority. And kind of go over those for the three different relevant specs. So for Resto, I assume most of you guys probably play Resto. It is the most relevant spec in vanilla. It's the most valuable just because of its improved Mark of the Wild. It comes with an Innervate that it can use readily, Battle Res throughout the fight, and then Decurse being, outside of Mage, the only class that can use Decurse. And there's roughly three major talents talent builds you can go. Some, depending on who you talk to and depending on the gear that you have, more or less relevant or good. The two primary ones that are most common and probably the better of the three, barring specific circumstances, being Swiftmend, Deep Resto, going all the way down to pick up Swiftmend, which, as an explanation of the spell, and we'll get into it a little bit later, but does consume for roughly what would be considered the full amount of the spell. It doesn't matter how much time's left on that, it will consume it. Moonglow, a little bit more generalized, goes for mana efficiency by going deeper into balance. And then Regrowth tries to fish for, crits in order to have increased casting speed. You can use any of them depending on how many druids in the raid. Stacking multiple is a little less effective, but all three of these specs are viable. Let's run it through utility and buffs. Most of you guys, I'm sure, playing understand these, but Innervate, Rebirth, Mark of the Wild, kind of your major additional buffs that you bring. Remove Curse and abolish Poison. That'll be pretty substantial coming into AQ on some of the fights. And then, unless you have a Feral Druid, one of the Restos will have to maintain Fairy Fire. Your major healing spells. So, kind of discussing on this. Down ranking, if you haven't healed in a raid yet or are learning to get into that, down ranking is essential in vanilla. It is the only way you'll be as mana efficient, and with the way damage is allocated in vanilla, it's very quick. It's not usually a substantial amount right away, but when you have 8 to 10 healers looking to heal all at once, quicker speed is pretty essential, and will also help avoid wasting mana on overhealing. This is a larger spreadsheet. It's not super important, but you can look into it. You can throw in whatever your healing power is, and it'll adjust these calculations accordingly. But these are kind of the rough calculations on how healing power affects each rank spell. I'm sure if any of you read the guides on Wowhead or Icy Veins, they'll usually recommend rank 4 as the primary spell for Healing Touch. Rank 3 and rank 4 are both pretty solid. Rank 3 is beneficial just because it's a half second quicker. It's a little less effective on healing, just due to the fact it's a smaller spell. So more likely than not, you want to err to 4, but in some situations, having the quicker cast is going to be a little bit more effective in some fights. Kind of moving into a little bit more specifics to the different Druid trees. Like I was saying, Swiftmend is pretty nice since Druid lacks outside of nature swiftness. They really don't have any oh shit instant heals like Priest, and Swiftmend's kind of a good benefit there. It is good to note though that Swiftmend, when used, can consume any Druid hot, whether it's yours or another Druid's. So if you are competing, or not competing, but you have another Druid on the team with you, be a little cognizant of that so that they don't throw a regrowth on or a rejuve and you consume it instantly with Swiftmend. As for Moon Growth, just the 9% mana reduction is huge, especially if you're not as geared. It is the most preferred talent build. Later on, if you have tier 2, if you get the 5 set, you can take a look at Regrowth, Nature's Grace. It really depends on how you play this, and I don't even think it's much of a consensus at all as to whether this is a better build or not. But it is an interesting style of playing where you're going to use a lot more Regrowths, which are less mana efficient, in order to get Nature's Grace to proc. The way this talent build goes, you're going to spec in and get about a 50% increase in crit chance on your Regrowth, which whenever you get a crit on that will proc Nature's Grace, reducing cast time on your next spell by half a second. So gives you a little bit more of a chance to compete with Paladins in their faster spell casting. And then, these are just kind of the general default builds for these different styles. Kind of go down here to pick up Swiftmend. Beyond that, it's kind of entirely up to you on how you want to spec. Moonglow, major importance coming down here to pick up this talent. And then Regrowth, Nature's Grace picks up the 5 into this talent down here on the Resto tree to get the increased crit chance on Regrowth. Stat priority, you're almost always going to want to prioritize healing power. Using EP values is pretty beneficial to kind of gauge gear as a whole, especially pieces that have maybe lower healing power but make up with it having a larger amount of intellect. And sometimes stam is nice to have. You might want to kind of figure out and change pieces around. A lot of the fights currently have been very short in BWL and MC. As we move forward, MP5 is going to become a lot more valuable as these fights drag on longer, and you're going to want the higher passive mana regeneration. But a lot of this, like this one in particular, was taken from 60 upgrades. There's a few different sites that have different EP values. You can kind of measure them out and see what you think, but ultimately, kind of try and maintain as much healing power as possible, but include some of those other pieces. It's an imperfect science. Like with Druid, you're far more likely to get tier gear, especially in BWL, over other pieces. So sometimes prioritizing those higher set bonuses is of value, and you're not always going to get the quote-unquote best in slot piece. But as long as you're kind of like focusing on this rough priority, then you're in good shape. So before I move into Feral DPS, did you guys have any questions or comments on Resto? I know I kind of ran through it pretty quickly, but I just kind of wanted to go through and give a rough overview, and then we can jump into questions and specifics as we move forward. No, nothing? All right, we can keep moving. So Feral DPS, this one is going to be a lot more involved, as it is definitely the most difficult out of all of the different Druid specs to play. It is a fairly unique spec to play in vanilla in general. Um, I'm sure anyone that's heard anything about the Feral Druid grind has heard about manual crowd pummelers and Wolf's Head Helm, both of which are essential to kind of the unique play style that Feral Cat has built into it. But they do come with the same major raid utilities, in addition to a 3% crit to party, which is definitely a good convincing component to allowing ferals to come along. They do lack virtually, they have no AoE damage outside of carrying sappers if you're engineering. So they're definitely weaker there, but they are able to do a pretty substantial amount of single target damage. Not warrior level, but enough. The primary thing with feral druids is going to be energy management, and trying to combat randomness in the rotation. So kind of specific abilities to feral. Shred, unlike you may have claw that you use while leveling, but shred is the only combo point generating ability you will use, which does require you to be behind the target. Ferocious Bite is your combo point spender. It will cost 35 energy to cast, and will consume all combo points as well as any additional energy you have. Trying to cast this as close to 35 energy as possible is the most energy damage efficient way to use this. Once you get more energy past 35, it then just becomes more efficient to use shred. So that's one particular thing with Ferocious Bite. Whenever you get to 4 combo points is when you're going to want to try and use that. You also have Omen of Clarity, which allows your melee attacks to proc clear cast, which, like I was saying, that kind of randomness that can mess with your rotation. Omen of Clarity is definitely part of that, because you may have 4 shreds and then you get a proc and you have to make a decision as to whether you're going to use another shred or you're going to use a Ferocious Bite. Even more so if you're at 5 combo points and you get an Omen of Clarity proc. Another thing that's is basically another button in your rotation is a power shift macro. If you're playing cat, you should absolutely have one of these. It is such a mandatory thing to your rotation that if you don't have it, you're wasting a substantial amount of time and effort and damage loss. And then the other thing is, when you're cat, you'll be priority to maintain Fairy Fire over the rest of druids in the group. So cat kind of it runs off a very general. It's just going to be kind of rules. Different scenarios and situations are going to mandate a particular response. This is kind of a given everything works without any randomness, because you can get an additional combo point from crits as well as a free cast or a clear cast from your Omen of Clarity. Taking those away, this is kind of the rough sense of how you want your rotation to be. If you're at 0 energy or close to nothing, you'll power shift. Usually you get an energy tick immediately up to 80, and then you follow through with a shred. If you're at 32 energy, you'll sit on it. You'll wait for that next energy tick to happen, shred again, down to 4, power shift. And the whole goal is to really optimize the energy you have, make sure that you're not power shifting as you get an energy tick, because you'll lose out on that extra 20 energy, and really just trying to maintain your combo points so you're not wasting anything. It's all about efficiency with it. You want to be as concise with your every ability you use, while making sure that you're not missing out on a GCD or a energy point or energy in general. So yeah, this is kind of more of roughly a little bit more detail into the rotation. Clear casting, when that is active, you're always going to use it on shred. It comes back to that energy efficiency thing. A free shred is better than a free ferocious bite. When you're at 4 combo points, at least 35 energy, ferocious bite. So, like I said, it's a general rule set. Now we'll go through some examples of this because it's one of those. It's a type of damaging a rotation that you're going to need practice with, because being able to react quicker to look at your energy and your combo points and make a decision is going to be the difference between okay damage and trying to parse up in the 90s. So we're going to go through some examples just so you guys can see, like, in different circumstances what you're going to do. These were taken from Wowhead, so if you looked at them, you'll kind of have an idea, but we'll run through these because they give a good example of kind of that decision making that you'll go through. So first circumstance, you're at 70 energy and you have 4 combo points. In this situation, even though you're at the 4 combo points, which usually you're getting ready to use a ferocious bite because there's a chance that you can shred, and if it's a critical, you'll generate 2 combo points and essentially waste 1. But in this circumstance, even though you're at the 4 combo points, you're way over your energy amount that you'd usually do a ferocious bite. So in this situation, you would start with a shred. So shred would then bring you down. You'd probably wait for a single tick of energy, and then you'd be able to ferocious bite. And that would be, even if you wasted a combo point, more efficient with your energy use. Example number 2, come in, you have 32 energy, 2 combo points, and 8 seconds left on Fairy Fire. In this situation, you're definitely not looking to ferocious bite because you only have 2 combo points. It would be super inefficient. But you currently don't have enough energy to shred. 32, a little underneath what you need. You also don't want to power shift at this point in time because you would essentially be losing 32 energy, which would be pretty inefficient. So in this situation, you could maybe fit in a Fairy Fire to re-up. Since it's 8 seconds left, it's pretty close. You'll re-up a Fairy Fire while you wait for the next tick of energy. That next tick of energy comes out, shred, and then continue on your cycle. Example number 3, 4 energy, 4 combo points. So you have 4 combo points, meaning you're at a point where you're ready to ferocious bite. You're at a point. 4 energy points, you're super low. You're definitely, anytime you're this low, you absolutely want to power shift. So in this situation, you'd power shift up to 60 energy and probably have an immediate tick, bringing you to 80. So you'd want to shred, and then if you need to, wait a tick, and then you'd want a ferocious bite. One more is going to be 52 energy, 5 combo points. In this one, you're a little over what you'd like to be for a ferocious bite. Realistically, you'd like to be closer to your 35, but in this scenario, the amount of energy you waste versus getting an additional combo point's not worth it. So you're just going to go ahead and ferocious bite here. And this is kind of your golden range. Between 35 and 62. It doesn't have to be a perfect science, but at least from a numbers perspective, if you're under 62 energy, it's efficient enough at 5 combo points or even 4 combo points to go ahead and use the ferocious bite, and you're not going to be in such a bad spot. And this is a good example of a situation where, without the clear casting proc, you would wait a tick and you would ferocious bite. Due to the fact that there is a clear casting proc, you're going to use a shred to clear this, and then you'll use the ferocious bite. So you'll lose a combo point, but that's okay. It's a free proc. It's not a big deal. So shred and then ferocious bite to clear away. I will say one thing that's a little tricky, and one of the things that makes it really tough, especially early on for Feral Druid, is hit is super important to have. It's hard to get capped out at 9% early on. But what can happen is these rotations, you might be following it perfectly. You go to Ferocious Bite at your 5 combo points, your Ferocious Bite misses. Now you're back to 0 energy at 5 combo points. And it puts you in a weird position where if you then power shift back up, you're going to want to shred again before you do your Ferocious Bite. So ensuring that you have enough hit where your abilities are landing helps to prevent more randomness in terms of your abilities actually hitting or not, which then makes your rotation a lot easier, because when you're committing to something, you know it's going to go through. And then this last one, 32 energy, 1 combo point, 20 seconds left on Fairy Fire. In this situation, you're just gonna wait for the tick. Anytime you're at 32 or roughly that amount, just wait for an energy tick. It's not worth power shifting. It's not that efficient. You waste a GCD. You're better off just waiting for the tick and then casting shred. And Feral, at least for Cat, Feral kind of has 2 major builds they can go. This one is very much Cat centric. If you're only going to be playing Feral DPS, this is the build to go. You know, major ones are going to make sure you have Fur and Restoration, as well as Omen of Clarity over here. And then beside that, the rest of these are pretty much all solid to pick up. This row is just armor, threat, and stun, so not really a big loss there. If you happen to be in more of an off-tank position, flexing into Cat DPS, then you'll do a slightly different build, because you're going to need to pick up the ability to generate threat. So you can lose the extra speed outdoors, and as well as make sure that you're not picking up, as much of the improved Demo Roar. Which at the end of the day, even if that was capped out, a warrior has a better improved Demo Roar. For stat priority, your 9% hit is the highest priority. It is unbelievably beneficial in just pure damage value, and whenever that rotation goes wrong, there's been times where I've been fighting Broodlord back before I had 9% hit, and I've had multiple Ferocious Bites miss on that fight. And the damage loss there, when you go to hit, it misses, you basically waste energy, still have all 5 combo points, and then might get blasted back. It's frustrating, to say the least. So do your best you can to try and get 9% hit. I know a lot of the Primal Bat Wing gear, the crafted stuff out of ZG, is really beneficial to helping that. You know, if you need to carry your Devil Sword gear, do so. Pick up some rings. You get the Tarnished Elven Ring. But at this point in time, you should be easily enough able to get that 9% hit, and I would definitely recommend it over any other stat. It's invaluable. Beyond that, crit, haste is okay. Attack speed you get from the manual crowd pummeler is going to be the biggest thing, but crit and agility, strength secondarily, but crit, agility, strength are going to be your big ones, just due to the pure attack power benefit they give you, as well as the crit, and the crit feeds into getting additional combo points, so it's doubly beneficial to you. Beyond the rotational stuff, Feral has unique gearing. The two big items that you will have that are best in slot the entirety of vanilla are going to be the Wolf's Head Helm, which anytime you do your power shift, it provides an additional 20. So rather than generate 40 with fur, you're going to have 60 energy to work with. And with how often you do that, it outpaces any item you could have in that spot. I made note that the only situation where you would alter and have a different helm is going to be on Veil, because energy is not something that you're concerned about. You're never power shifting on Veil. A secondary piece that the cat is famous for is farming out manual crowd pummelers. Each of these have 3 charges that, when used, provide 50% increase in attack speed. This impacts your crit, your hit, and your haste. It is the single most important piece to have on a Feral Druid in terms of DPS increase. This buff that it gives you, 30 seconds of this, it's silly damage. You don't have to use it on trash. I wouldn't recommend it. This is exclusively for bosses, and I would always have a alternative mace that you can use otherwise as a stat stick. Any questions on Cat? No questions? Or am I just not hearing you guys?
I think you're without questions. One thing I'll add to the pummeler thing too. Don't let pummelers intimidate you. Like, people always like drag on the grind of pummelers. The fact is once your team or whoever you're raiding with is up and pumping pretty good, most of your boss fights are 30 seconds to a minute anyways. So out of the 3 uses, you might be using 1 or 2. And as well as once you start getting geared up, like personally, my MCP runs are like 2 minutes and 40 seconds per pummeler, like per attempt. So you can bang them out really, really fast.
Yeah, they're pretty efficient. Even if you're a little slower, I can't imagine it would take you more than 5 minutes per run. And if you're lucky, you can get 3 or more on a single run. Or unlucky, you get 0.
Yep.
But yeah, they're very nice to have. So moving into tank, this is definitely, aside from Cat, this is probably the more common one. Having somebody that's in a flex off tank position. I will say, if this is something you're interested in doing or are curious about, it does often get kind of put into a secondary tier with how powerful warriors are. And don't get me wrong, Feral definitely has certain weaknesses, kind of noted here. You have no on-use defensives. You are entirely at the mercy of the damage that is done and the healing that comes into you. The only thing you can do is prepare with gear and consumables. Fortunately, Bear has the highest effective health pool of any tank, and it's not even remotely close. We'll get into that a little bit later. But aside from that, you have a single taunt aside from your AoE, like on your AoE longer cooldown taunt. So in situations where you're off tanking, say in BWL, and Wing Buffet comes up and you need to taunt off, you need to be ready to use that challenging roar if that taunt misses, and then after that you're kind of in a situation where you're just crossing your fingers that it hits every time, because your taunt has a baseline 17% chance to miss, because it's a spell hit that's required for it to have higher chance of hitting. Warriors, fortunately, they have their taunt as well as their additional attack that I'm blanking on, but they have an Mocking Blow. They have Mocking Blow as a backup, so even if they needed to use their challenging shout, they have 2 taunts that they can readily use. And then the final thing is, if you've touched a druid tank at all past leveling, it's great. It's not bad, but once you get to max level, they have abysmal AoE taunt generation and damage. Their swipe ability hits 3 people and does flat damage. It does not scale with your gear, and it's basically just a rage dump. It is not going to help you. Maul, fortunately, is the highest threat generating ability in the game and can kind of save you. It's just going to take a lot more work to do AoE threat management. So your main abilities that are going to be part of your rotation, aside from Fairy Fire, which we kind of covered previously, Maul, which doing it right, it should be queued up. It works the same exact way as Heroic Strike, where it takes the place of your melee swing. Especially if you're main tanking, this isn't an issue. If you're off tanking, you can be a little bit more rage starved, but this ability should be queued up for every melee swing. It generates massive amounts of threat and does okay damage. It's nothing substantial, but this is pretty much your bread and butter. Swipe, you can use as a filler if you need to dump rage. It does a little bit of damage, a tiny bit of threat generation, but realistically, it's secondary. If you don't have enough rage, it shouldn't be used. And Demoralizing Roar is kind of nice to have for if you're just collecting AoE threat initially, because it doesn't have a cap, whereas Swipe has 3. It is less effective than Warrior's Improved Demo, so on actual boss fights, this isn't really necessary. It's not going to be active. You should have a warrior that's keeping up their improved demo. So threat gen, single target. This is your domain. You're gonna go in. You should be immediately hitting with Maul to establish an initial threat lead, and continue that. You'll maintain Fairy Fire. Anytime you're not doing anything, you can just re-up Fairy Fire. Some bosses, there's a really high chance of it resisting, so don't wait until last second to re-up that. You can use it whenever you're not doing anything. And then if you happen to have extra rage, you can use Swipe in between. On situations where you're maintaining top threat on a boss, you're going to be using your manual crowd pummeler. Uptime on this, when this is active and you're hitting something, there's nothing that can possibly take threat from you. It's never going to happen. Outside of something taunting, you're never going to lose threat. Multi-target, and like I said, this is a little bit more specific to dungeons. There's not as many situations when you're going to be tanking more than one mob in raids. Maybe the small sections where at that point you can use your challenging roar. But in dungeons, coming into a mob, you'll start with the demo roar to collect kind of an initial bit of threat. Maul, your main focus target that you want people to go after. Do a swipe just to continue to get a little bit of threat on all of them, and then you're just going to keep tabbing and mauling on each sequential target. It's a single maul is infinitely more threat than multiple swipes, and is more damage and more mana and more rage efficient. 2 different builds. This one is if you're bear main tank. The one thing you want to make sure you pick up is this ability here, which when hit, you have the ability to generate additional rage. Essentially, like Greta, I believe it's on critical hits that you generate 5 rage.
Yep.
And armor, you can dump 2 points in here, but armor is really like this. This is a pretty minimal improvement to your overall armor. And then the other talent would be the previous flex cat tank talent. So stat priority on feral tanks is very unlike many other phases of this game, where avoidance stats and TBC are kind of king. Dodge and things like that are super important. They don't have a lot of value in vanilla, just due to the nature of how damage comes out, as well as how healing happens in raids, you're basically always going to have at least 2 to 3 healers spamming heals on you at any given time. So dodging a hit doesn't really do much for you. The biggest value in one of the reasons Bear is a very effective tank is your EHP, which is your effective health pool. And this, for all intents and purposes, is a measure of your tankiness. It is, in a worst case scenario, if you're tanking a boss and it repeatedly gets critical hits on you, like you can say, what's the most that a boss could hit you for? And whatever that is, it's your effective health pool divided by that. And you could say, oh, this 4 critical hits in a row is what you could manage. So
Minus your mitigation as well.
right, yeah, it's part of your effective health tool is like you'll have that, and then depending on how much armor you have, like you'll have a certain amount of mitigation, and that factors into this. You don't really need to understand this premise. It's just what's used to feed into the kind of stat weighting on the right side. But basically, like if you use 60 upgrades and you use the EP values for that, using that's a pretty good gauge. Some different guides kind of disagree on how much value different things have, but unlike where you're playing feral DPS, your 9% hit is really essential. For Bear, you more so want to lean towards whatever is going to give you the best value towards your effective health pool. 1% hit does affect your total threat generation, but you kind of want to balance those things. You want to make sure that you have enough survivability as well as your ability to generate threat. But it tends to be that you're leaning towards the highest value on these charts is going to be more effective for gearing. The other thing that kind of comes into factor later on, and it's more something Greta runs into since he's kitted out, is, you know, the more armor you have, the less damage you take, which is good. However, it then begins to negatively affect your rage generation. So there are times where you want less armor and less mitigation so that you can generate more threat. So trying to find that sweet spot, depending on the fights, is something that you can worry about. So carrying a little bit of extra gear to switch things out, mess around with, is kind of pretty valuable to Druid tanks. But
And
yeah, go ahead.
to comment on that quick, what you said is exactly what I did by accident, and I ended up way too tanky, and I realized that, like I was in this point where I was super tanky, but all my gear was revolved around being tanky, and none of it was revolved around like threat wise. So until I got my rank 14 gear, my threat actually wasn't even the greatest. And once I got my rank 14 gear on, that was a little bit more PvP or a little bit more damage oriented. It went crazy. So it's one thing, like for instance, I took like, you know, Mark of Tyranny over Black Hands in hopes to become super tanky. But when you're a bear, you're going to be tanky no matter what gear you put on, really. So it's something to keep in mind if you're going to go the bear tanking route.
100%. Yeah, and then kind of following up on this, this is just a good example of, like, say, Abyss list for this next phase. I more just wanted to put this up for you guys to see some of the different enchants you want to go for. You can kind of look through some of the different Abyss lists, but just from the enchants alone, like, there is value in some of the defensive ones with the 70 armor on cloak, but a lot of times, like these 1% haste on pants, gloves, helm, and strength, having the extra attack power and speed scales exceptionally well with bear. So keep that in mind, that the stats that you usually associate with tanking and mitigation are to be balanced with the ability to do more damage, because unlike warrior, where their heroic strike, when it hits, adds a flat static amount of threat, with druid it is a multiplier that goes on to the total damage that you do from your maul, for example. And the more damage you do is just scaled even higher with how much threat you can generate. So damage is very, very important for establishing good threat generation. But yeah, that's kind of running through those three different specs, kind of what's involved with them. But obviously, any questions, do you guys have any particular ones? I can go back to any section you want and kind of run through certain things. This was just to give you a quick rundown and overview of each of the different specs for those that might be a little new to it or were looking for more information as to how they were played.
Yeah, I was just curious on bear tanking.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes some sense now. Why I wasn't holding threat. Don't swipe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the same thoughts too. Don't swipe.
The thing is, swipe is actually a very useful tool, but what you cannot use it for is initial threat. So like if I'm in let's say I'm tanking like a strat live, right? Lots of AoE packs, always multi packs. What I usually will try and do is I'll go in and try and get at least one maul on each target and then move into swipes just to maintain, because you're cranking so much threat that once you get past that kind of initial burst of damage from the DPS, maul is enough to maintain. Like, you're still hitting 1,400, 1,500, sometimes 2,000 threat per maul when you're critting pretty hard. So if you just get that initial 2,000-3,000 head start and then just maintain with swipe, I find it works a lot better. That's how I use it anyways.
Yeah, if you can get if your DPS can give you a tiny bit of time to establish threat, because especially like the more you get hit, the more rage you generate too. So like if you demo roar and even like a maul initial swipe just to kind of make sure that like you have a little bit of a buffer room before tabbing and making sure you're mauling everything, the more they're hitting you during that time, A, it makes your life significantly easier, but B, it gives you more time to generate rage and then get those mauls out, because once you get mauls on a few different of the mobs, you're in good shape.
Yeah, like even for instance, like in Strat Live, like if the mob, because you know how the mobs do that stupid charge mechanic, right? What I'll do is I'll just run in, and even if they're all spread, I'll just maul one and fuck off to the next one, knowing that that initial maul is enough to hold a pretty decent amount of damage. So you do get some time because you get that massive threat spike too. Mm-hmm. Like, I use that pretty often. And I was actually going to comment on that too, in terms of like if you're like main tanking single target too, I'll actually use my taunt with a maul kind of incorporated right off rip, because as you're going in, naturally people are buffing and like whatever, warriors are doing their fucking little warrior shits, and like all that generates some amount of rage or some amount of threat on the boss. So a lot of the time what I'll do is I'll go in and hit a taunt maul like immediately, and then you'll jump everybody instantly plus whatever you get on top of your maul, so you can go in there and hit like 5, 6, 7,000 threat hits just because everyone else generated you a little bit of threat as you were going in, like throwing heals on you or whatever they're doing, right? That works really well a lot of the time for that initial threat jump.
Makes sense now.
Yep. Another thing too, if you're using 60 upgrades, be careful of their tanking lists.
Yeah, they're good.
Because, what I've realized is that their aim, like how they have it set up for some reason, because how high your stamina EP is and your armor EP is, they make it out like you have to be fucking retardedly tanky, when in reality, like a lot of those pieces could be swapped out with DPS pieces along the way and you'll be more than tanky enough.
Yeah, a lot of it's fight specific too. Like, there's certain fights, Brood Lord's a great example, where you're going to want to lean more into like that stam gear and really ensure that you have as much EHP as possible. But then there's other fights where you're not really concerned about that, and threat's really king.
Yeah, I was watching you the other night. We did an MC, and you were wearing like a bunch of green fire resistant stuff. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
That's just specific to certain fights. So the
Yeah,
two
that's
fights in
just
MC are Baron and primarily Rag, and those
yeah,
are just
and a
because they
bunch of the
don't.
trash.
Yeah, they don't do a lot of physical damage. It's mostly fire damage. So you switch over to have the fire resist gear and stuff. But that's kind of a unique scenario. That's not really true for most fights.
No. Well, especially those fights, like for instance, me like I go like right against the grain. I just go like rag, fire maw, anything that's cranking out a significant amount of fire damage. I just go full blitz on fire resist and say screw all other stats pretty much because in reality, like druids do scale off their gear like decently, but you could be naked and still hit crazy mauls. So I'd prefer to just not take the damage and just make sure I'm tanky as hell. And just, a lot of those fights too, you can use taunts and other little things to keep the threat going. And it's never hurt me any. Like, I literally tank reg with 0% hit pretty much. And it's never hurt. Never hurt too bad, anyways.
I can't say I go that far. I still try and keep DFT on, just the 2% hit on that. I try and keep a little bit of hit. But
Well,
yeah,
I'm getting lucky now. I got so much fire resist now, and like with getting like the Ubers buff and stuff. Now I can swap out gear every now and then. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just go straight for the hit pieces, Band of Akiri, and DFT.
Yeah, you're pretty much in good shape there.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, if you're a little unfamiliar with the fire res kind of requirements on those, they're specific to certain bosses. For tanks, it's technically you want to be at least 300, 315 is kind of like the number you want to hit for cap.
Okay.
You can
But
get
then,
away
mind
with
you,
a little less,
that's
but
fully buffed though. That's fully buffed.
yeah,
So
yeah,
like
exactly.
your base set's gonna have like 250 ish, give or take.
Okay.
Because you can also implement fire jujus and stuff. Like there's a bunch of little things you can use. And also like I personally use blazing emblems as my trinkets on my fire set. So you can also pop a blazing emblem and get an extra plus 20 if you really need it. Little stuff like that.
Mhm.
But if anyone does need any fire resist, hit me up. I got everything. I can craft literally everything, so just let me know. We can get you set up. I set Menari out with a little fire resist care package his first week.
Oh, yeah. Any other kind of specific questions or any particular spec that you wanted more focus on? Just curious.
Do you ever find a necessity to pop a stone shield where you would have to break out a bear to drink it?
Never,
No, I
never.
pre-pop them only, and if you're in any like dungeon tanking, you're pretty safe to pop out if you got to, because that shit doesn't hit. Anything in raid's gonna fucking annihilate you and wipe you off the face of the earth, unfortunately.
Yeah, most of those fights aren't lasting that long anyway, so I mean, popping it before you run in is going to be more than sufficient enough.
And really, the only boss I really find that necessary to do on is Broodlord. He's the
Yeah.
only one that hits hard enough that he could really get close. Because the thing is, you're gonna end up with so much health. Like, you have a lot of the time like 2 or 3 thousand more health in your normal set than the warriors do, right? So popping that stone shield, I do it just because I'm sweaty, but in reality you're probably okay. Not like I'm sitting right now like a base 67-68% mitigation. So
Yeah,
even when he does those big wombo combo 13k hits, I'm really only taking 6 or 8k of that.
right, and that kind of flows back to that effective health pool. Like you like compared to warriors, it's a silly difference. Like the amount of room for damage you can soak is substantial. So there's a much lower chance of you getting popped by like a thrash than any warrior. Like a warrior, realistically, even as geared as like the main tanks in team 1, 2, 3, like they still have a chance of getting popped if they don't properly prepare for something like Ebon Rock or Flame Gore. Whereas realistically, if a druid took that initial hit, they're probably going to live through it, even without the additional consume.
Yeah, you just stack hella stamina, hella armor. Like most raid nights, I'm sitting like 800 stamina, about between 10 and 14,000 armor. Like the armor and the health pool for druids is just super broken. You can do some pretty gross things too. Like once you get geared up and you start getting cocky a little bit, like every now and then I'll just like pop a really inappropriate challenging roar and just grab everything to see what happens. Do that in CG a lot.
Yeah, I was. I forget if I was one of your teams is Menari's or yours. I was off tanking. And I kind of accidentally did that on the wealth room.
Yeah, I mean, if you take
When I
too
was on
much,
rock.
if you take too much, you get rocked. Um, it usually you're okay though. It depending on the grouping and stuff. So definitely you could get away with a lot more as a well geared feral druid.
Yeah.
Like Greta was saying, the nice thing about it is they scale exceptionally well with their gear, but also to start off in a good place due to the way Dire Bear works. So,
Yeah.
it's pretty flexible.
Well, and like you never ever have to worry about weapon hit. Like it's super, especially early on. It's super broken. Like when we were pre BWL in this server, like I felt invincible as a bear tank, man. Like I was destroying everything in Prebis. But your Prebis is like massive.
Yeah, it's pretty good. You don't replace it until AQ, basically.
Pretty much, yeah, a lot of it. Unless you
Um,
get like the best of the best like BWL gear and the
Yeah,
rank
it's
14
literally
gear.
if you don't get the PvP gear, a good chunk of your gear is your pre-bis.
And a lot of it's craftable and like really, really easy to get to. Especially the bear tank stuff. I can't really speak too much on the cat stuff too much, but a lot of it's interchangeable, I know. But a lot of it I was just like, oh, this is easy, just craft this, craft that, buy that, and you're
Yeah.
good to go.
Yeah, most of it's
Grab-
not bad. Hodge is another one that's like realistically the only difficult ones to farm out are Hodge and then True Strike Shoulders. Beyond those two, it's a fairly easy pre-bis and kind of getting yourself geared up. It's not
I
bad.
fucked up and got rid of one of the trinkets.
Which one?
The one from Ubers.
Oh, that's.
you can
Because I wasn't gonna tank.
I gotcha.
you can request it back. You can have it put back.
Maybe there's a time limit on it. I checked it
Oh,
out.
yeah, this was a long time ago.
Yeah, that's
Sad.
unfortunate. The only good thing is
I
like
feel that though.
moving forward, there are some decent trinket options. Hodge is always there. You can, if you're feeling up for it, farm out the Cenarian rep because the Earth Strike trinket is very good.
Nuts.
It's very good for establishing threat.
Yep.
But yeah, overall, I mean the trinkets aren't the biggest thing in the world. It's not.
I ran one trinket for literally like 2.5 months because I couldn't get a Hodge
Yeah.
after killing Angerforge like 160 times.
Yeah, you can get the Hodge if you're dedicated to it, and then you could also pick up the lodestone from Dire Maul, and those will be okay enough.
I already got the Hodge.
So the hard part's over, man.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm only missing the Maul for my tank set and another trinket.
That's not bad at all.
Nice. See, and I didn't even use them all either. I actually, when I initially started tanking, I used the staff pretty much like for the first couple months.
Yeah, that's what I got right now.
Yep. And it was still, know what? It was actually crazy, to be honest with you. And then obviously, you got to remember, like, this is full progression at the start of a raid team, but, like, I didn't even use crowd pummeler. Like, I had crowd pummelers. I didn't even use them. I didn't even use world buffs, and I didn't even use, like, an actual threat weapon until I got, like, 2 or 3 months into a team. because like just like the initial, like when everyone's under geared, you shine like crazy. But then once everyone starts creeping up, it starts getting a little
The
scary.
more world
Now
buffs
that rank
people get.
14,
Yeah.
well, and rank 14 warriors out
Mhm.
now, and like those guys are pumping. And even like some of the casters, like I've got Potato on my team, who is like one of the most ridiculous warlocks I've ever played with, and like their threat is terrifying. Like they'll hit 3 shadow bolts and do 20,000 threat, like insane.
I guess that's a good thing to note. So, manual crowd pummeler, the benefit of it is it's a little bit more of a predictable threat increase because just the way that Maul functions, it's a multiplier off of the damage done. So your threat is far less linear than Warriors. It is much more spiky. You could go from 0 threat to like thousands above the next closest person in a single hit. Like it's very inconsistent. So while if you're main tanking, it's not as much of an issue. If you are off tanking, you do have to be very cognizant of your threat because you want to try and keep a gap so that if you do get a crit, you're not going to overtake the main tank, but you want to make sure you don't lag too far behind. So that aspect of it's actually a little tricky. Threat management when you're an off tank can be
Very tricky.
Yeah. So definitely.
Well, and especially too, like what'll happen is you'll end up in this awkward spot where you have a DPS on your ass, but whatever, the main tank gets fucking parried or whatever it may be, and then he slows down for a second, and like often enough, there's times where like my main tank, well, whatever, his threat will kind of sputter a bit if that's a parry or whatever it may be. And I'm literally sitting there with a maul charged up, and I literally have to just stop attack, and I just have to sit there and wait for the threat to update on the meter and pray that there's a good enough gap that I can keep going. Like, it happens all the time. The threat gen is just so ridiculous sometimes. Like, it's a very fine line you dance.
Tis finicky.
Last night, I was dancing the line horribly.
Right,
But it happens, though. It's tricky.
Yeah. Any other particular questions? Because I know we're coming up in an hour, so I don't want to hold people too long if you want to head out. But I'm gonna make sure I post this recording at some point. I'll post this whole PowerPoint as a reference for people that weren't able to make it. If there's no more questions for tonight, we can adjourn. But I'm always available in the Druid Discord. I mean, Greta's another great resource when it comes to Druid tanking. So if you guys do have any questions that pop up, reach out, shoot a message in the Druid Discord, and I'll answer as quick as I can.
Yep.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any aspiring tanks, definitely hit me up because I now have a soft spot for Druid tanks, and I think we got to absolutely dominate the Warriors. So yeah, I'm more than happy to get any information you need to beat the Warriors.
But I'm both. I'm both a warrior and a druid.
I know, you're in trouble.
But awesome,
I
guys.
just know the best of both worlds.
Hey! I don't care. You want to come to the dark side, my boy? The door's open. You know,
Dark side.
I won't judge you either way. Well, actually, I think it's the light side.
I'm always available on Barrere for you.
You're gonna want to join our side, especially when TBC comes around. There ain't no questions.
Oh,
I know.
buddy. Yeah, our time to shine is really coming. I can't wait.
Oh, yeah.
That main tank spot's gonna be hella nice.
But I appreciate all you guys coming and showing up for this. I know.
Yeah, and appreciate you, Hits. So you've been benching for us quite a bit, man. Fucking thanks for the help. You're always a nice beast to have on frickin' call when a million people call out.
Just got my second tune up to 60 today.
Nice,
Very
grabs.
Huge.
Yep. About to
Yeah,
run
congrats.
BWL.
Hell yeah.
Nice.
But
Yeah,
all right.
dive into it now. Or else you'll end
Yep.
up like my alt and be like 2 phases behind and be playing catch up.
I just gotta grind out ZG a bit. You'll be golden.
Dude,
Yeah,
I haven't.
I already got Bloodvine.
Nice.
I haven't missed a ZG lockout, and I have not got one piece I need. It's so bad.
Me neither. All I need is the